can see your ugly face. No, it's coming through fine, Danny. Like the chart of the world, but I was wondering why Australia and New Zealand is in the center of the world. That doesn't make too much sense to me.
Well, you guys just got to get educated where the real center of the universe is. It's down here. Slap bang in the middle.
You know, I'll tell you a story while Tilo's working on the technical problem. You got it?
I got it fixed here. So we are, I think we are live. Yeah.
Okay. Well, welcome everybody to our, I guess, 5th Zoom meeting. You know, it's my real pleasure to introduce Olivier Beaute to those of you that don't know him, but I'm guessing that 80 or 90% of you know Olivier, at least know his reputation. He has been a really good friend of every Amel owner. He knows more about Super Marimous and Amel 54s than I believe anyone alive today. I guess he saw every Super Marimou as it was built, and many of the 54s. I believe he trained some of you aboard your Amel when it was brand new and delivered in La Rochelle. He's one of the first people that I met at Amel when I asked him for his suggestion on spares for cruising. And you know what? That list was absolutely perfect. Some of the things he listed, I doubted, but I went ahead and bought, and I was sure glad that I did. So today, Olivier is no longer with Amel. He spent 19 years with Amel, and he owns his own survey company, ATLANTIC Yacht Survey, and specializes in Amels. Somebody has their mic open. Check your settings. Matt, I think you got your mic open.
I got it muted.
Okay, all right. Okay, so this is Olivier right here in the middle of the screen, and he's doing what he does best, checking very closely everything on an Amel. You know, the first survey that I had on our Amel, the surveyor said did not climb the mast. He said there was not a line appropriate for climbing the mast, and I later found out that that's sort of a common excuse for not doing it. Olivier has worked in boating all of his life, sailing school, worked at a sailboat rental agency, and of course, where most of us know him, he was the manager of Amel after sales service for 19 years. He started sailing when he was 13 years old. He served in the French Navy. Olivier has extensive knowledge of construction and equipment of an ocean class sailing yacht, especially Amel. Olivier's experience allows him to do pre-purchase surveys as well as insurance surveys. And in 2013, Olivier was certified as an expert evaluator. I recommend Olivier for Amel surveys, and those of you that are my clients know that the only person that I recommend for a survey of an Amel is Olivier, because when I recommend somebody as a surveyor, I must be 100% sure of that person's ability, knowledge, ethics, and honor. So Olivier is the only one that I recommend, and you can see the little cutout in the bottom right of your screen. That's right from my website. There's nobody else listed there, only him. So it's my great pleasure to introduce somebody that I just really, really like, a very good friend, a very honorable and ethical person. Olivier, it's your meeting from here on.
Okay, so should I put my presentation?
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
Go ahead and put your presentation up now.
Okay. this one. And share. So that's and then I need to do this. Okay, it's only the title. So before I start, I would like to thank Bill and Tilo for organizing this Zoom meeting, because I'm totally unable to do this. So I'm not very familiar with the Zoom meetings. Everything Bill said was true. I'm 56 and I've been working 19 years at Amel. I was not manager of the customer service 19 years. I've been on for 5-6 years, and I started at the bottom of the customer service. You know, working in boats, launching the boats, installing the mast, and preparing the boats for their new owners. So talking about surveys, we're going to talk about pre-purchase surveys, not insurance claim surveys, which is something that I also do. And I think this may be of interest for people who want to purchase an Amel boat, but also for the people who want to sell their boat. Because sometimes, you know, I see some boats that are really not ready for the survey. I mean, very or sometimes dirty or very dirty, or with many items not working, and it's too bad, because very bad image is going to be sold. So for the people who want to sell their boat, who want to sell their boat, show a boat that is good condition, rather clean, and this will ease, I think, the relation between the seller and the purchaser. The way I conduct a survey is always the same way, and it always leads to the same scheme. It's basically in 5 parts: the hull, the deck, the mast and rigging, the inside of the boat, and the engine room. And this is also worse for other boats than the Amel boats. I do also some surveys on other boats than the Amel boats. So when checking the hull, of course, the hull itself is very important, and so I never make any moisture test unless the boat has been out of the water for a long time. Most of the time, 99% of the time, the boat is just been taken out of the water. So of course, the hull is very humid, and it would be really silly to perform moisture tests on the hull. But of course, I have a look at the hull and look for bubbles. That's the bad side of a hull. When you see bubbles, that's probably meaning there are some problems, unless you try to scrap them off. And sometimes the bubble is only the antifouling, and when you remove the bubble, you see the hull in a good condition. So when you hold the boat out, don't be scared if you see some bubble. You need to know what these bubbles are. Okay, but if it's a hard bubble and when you burst it, you have some liquid going out, then it's bad sign. Bad news. Okay. What is the keel and the ballast? And so, of course, when checking the keel and ballast, it's very important that the ballast is well attached to the keel stub. So there must not be any discontinuity between the keel stub and the ballast. And I also check some of the keel bolts inside in most Amel boats, that's inside the freshwater tank. And on the newer boats now, the bolts are of easier access because the water tank is no more in the keel stub. So you can see here the inside of a freshwater tank, where you can see on the down edges some cracks on both sides, and the boat that has been suffering heavy grounding, and in fact the ballast was a bit detached, so that was a rather bad survey. This ended up with no fail because of this, of course.
Olivier, can I just ask you briefly?
Yes.
You seem to have a bandwidth issue, so perhaps if you turn off your video camera, because we're having your audio get jittery on us. So if you just maybe turn off your video camera right down. Yeah, great.
Okay. You think it's okay now? But you, can you hear me now?
Olivier,
yes, it's much better.
Yeah, we hear you. It's better. Definitely better, and we see your slideshow as well.
Oh, okay.
Tout va bien.
Okay, so I'm sorry if my talking was not good up to now.
It was coming in and out. So yeah, just keep going, and you're coming up much clearer now.
I think there's no need for repeating, but it's much clearer now.
Okay. Anyway, I think you understand the way I'm going to do, and if some people haven't understood what I told them, then I think we will treat this with the questions in the end. So an important part of the hull is the rudder and skeg, of course. So checking this is always very important in order to know if the rudder is moving easily, and also if it has not too much slack in its bearings, and also with its steering wheel cables. So that's an important part. Also an important part with the rudders in the Amel boats is the zinc anodes. And so I always check the electric relation between the zinc anodes and the underwater parts of the boat, like mainly the propeller and the transmission and the ballast. That's an easy thing to do. And yes, sometimes it has to be improved, or sometimes the ballast is no more connected. So of course, in my recommendation, I tell the purchaser to connect it again. It's very important that the ballast is connected to the ground system. I don't know why, but
Olivier,
not moving anymore.
if you just click anywhere on your slide,
Yes.
then it gets your system back to the slide, and now you can
Okay.
press
Okay.
ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Tilo. Very helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Another important part, as you know, is the transmission from the engine to the prop and the prop itself. And I always recommend that we try to hold the boat out of the water as soon as possible before making the engine test, because if the prop is not clean, then it's pointless to make tests. If, with a dirty prop, especially an auto prop, you will soon get vibrations, and maybe you may think the engine is underpowered because you don't have the full power. So before making engine test, first thing is to have the boat out of the water, or ask the owner in a few days before the survey to have the prop cleaned by a diver, because sometimes it's not possible to do the whole out before the engine test. So of course, on the transmission, very important is to check if it's moving or not on its bolt. You know, the bottom of the transmission is held to the ballast with one bolt. So it's important to check this. And also the condition of the propeller, the blades, the ball bearings, or if it's a fixed propeller, if the blades are in good condition, and also the corrosion of the prop, which can happen sometimes. Sometimes if you see a pink colored prop, this means it has suffered some at some point some corrosion. And for these special Amel transmissions, it's important to check any oil leak, because if the shaft bushing is not properly tight, you will see some oil dripping or going out of the transmission. So and for the older boats, we have also this more classical kind of shaft, and you can see on the picture a max prop. So that's also something to check. And as you know, the newer boats from Amel have come back to a classical line shaft, or I would say a drivetrain, which is in line with the engine. So in that case, very important to check the last bearing, what we call the cutlass bearing at the shaft output. It's very important that there is not too much slack, because it gives vibrations, and that's not good for the shaft itself. These long shafts, as you know, they may suffer fatigue stress after long periods of running with vibrations, and it ends up with a breaking of the shaft. So that's not very good. All the Amel boats since 1985, they have bar thrusters, and there has been different kinds of bar thrusters, but the most common on Super Maramus, Santorins, Maramus is the one you see there, with a GRP prop and a very simple gearbox and a big motor. So I think all the maintenance And what you have to care for is in the Amel Yacht Owners Group. And so I will not say too much about this. What anyone should check is that this bar thruster has not been too much modified. For instance, with steel screws instead of plastic screws for the propeller, or yes, sometimes I see different kinds of propeller or propellers that have been reshaped, and that's sometimes giving vibrations too. So it's better to replace with a regular prop because vibrations can damage the gearbox and the bearings and the seals, especially the prop shaft seals. That's a bar thruster for an Amel 54. And there has been also this kind of bar thruster with 5-blade propellers. And as you know, on the later models, like this is an Amel 55, that's a stern thruster. Also very important to check for water tightness, also very important. And the last thing on the hull is the through hull fittings. And that's also very important. A surveyor is very much worrying about two main things when surveying a boat. Is this boat able to sink? So that means can seawater easily come into the boat? And the second thing is, can this boat easily get fire? So the fire side, very worrying for a surveyor, and this is more on the electrical side. Most of the fires in a boat start with a bad electric system, or a system that has been modified in the wrong way. So through hull fittings, of course, it's very important to check if the through hull fittings are watertight, in good condition, the ones for the sensors, but also the ones for the valves, for the bar thruster, and any through hull fitting. There is one very big one that's in the engine room for the transmission, or even for the classical drive shafts. So always very important to check for leaks, seawater leaks. That must be a big concern for surveyors. Okay, and of course, a very important part of the hull check is how is the structure? Is the structure strong, or are there signs of damages? On this picture, you can see that's on the starboard side of a Supermaramo. You can see one of those Omega reinforcement pieces, or ribs. You could call them a rib. This one is completely delaminated from the hull. This is why you can see this light color. The white color means it's totally delaminated. And you can see also that the rib is broken. So not only the rib is delaminated, but also broken in the middle. This was due to the fact that the boat had been aground on the side and hitting rocks with the hull on a starboard side. So of course the surveyor must absolutely check all the parts of the hull inside too, because you may not see this from the outside, but inside, when the boat has been aground and had a severe grounding, you may see some stringers broken, delaminated, or ribs like this, or inside the water tank. We can see here cracks in the gel coat, showing that the GRP clothes that bond that's a baffle inside the water tank. So these GRP bonding clothes are here delaminated, and you can tell because of these cracks. And here also you can see the same kind of cracks around the gel coat that covers the bonding cloth. So structure, inspecting the structure is also important. Okay, now we are coming to the deck. So the deck is also a very important part. I showed this picture because you can see on this picture that there has been some modifications on this boat. And of course, apart than the classical checks you can do on an Amel boat, checking the hardware, the delamination of the decks, or the windows, the hatches, all this. You have to pay attention if there has been a big modification. You can see a hard dodger covering the cockpit with stanchions that are bolted to the aft deck. So, of course, this must be monitored, especially where you have bolts going through the decks, because the decks are for 90% of the deck is made of a balsa sandwich. And if you drill holes in this sandwich, you must make sure no water is going to penetrate the balsa wood, which would make it rot, and that would definitely damage the sandwich. So pay attention to any modification of a deck. So of course, I know what are the modifications. You may not know what has been modified, because you are not, from most of you, you are not so familiar with the decks. That's a picture, an example of a deck. That's an Amel Supermaramu. I think that's year 93, and the deck have been completely rebuilt, refit with a synthetic material, and this one was really very well done. That's a very good example of a nice refit of a deck of a Supermaramu. I showed this picture. I wanted to show you that's a bar thruster of an Amel 54, and when you see, I don't know, you can see in this compartment, which is originally white because it's painted with white gel coat. This is covered with black dust, and this dust is coming from the carbon brushes of the bar thruster. And if you see this means the bar thruster has been really overused for a long time, and then the carbon brushes have been deteriorated. So this one will need a full check of its motor, including replacement of the carbon brushing. So sometimes not cleaning an area can be also can tell also much about the condition of the ballast. Next part of the survey is checking the mast. So I will not tell you everything I check on the mast. You can tell probably. I check if I see any crack in the mast, in the aluminum extrusions. But the reason why it is very important that your surveyor goes to the top of the mast, that's because he can see this kind of thing. This is a shackle that holds the Genoa furler swivel, and you can see this shackle is about to quit. And of course, if this happens at sea, you will see your Genoa slowly come down, and then it will be a big mess. So the surveyor is also supposed to go up the mast, I think, and check for these troubles. This is not a big trouble, but this shackle needs to be replaced at once, for sure. Another part of the mast and rigging part is all the furlers. So the furlers have to be watched, of course, and tested. And you can see on this, that's the bottom of a Genoa furler on a Supermarino. And it has a bracket, a stainless steel plate bracket, which is totally bent. So this can be straightened, of course, but this means also that this boat has been sailing without enough halyard tension on the Genoa, and the whole foil and furling unit has been acting as a sledgehammer. You know, every time the boat went into the waves, it bent this support. I don't know if you can see the. You will ask me questions later on. Okay, this is very frequent. I see this bent part on many boats. Another example why it's good to climb up the mast. You can see on this picture that the angle of the spreaders is not the same. And this is probably after the rigging has been replaced. And the people replacing the standing rigging have not set the spreaders at the same angle, which of course is not good. The spreaders must have the same angle. Very important. So again, very important that the surveyor goes up mast. This is an example of a Bama furler without main. So that is completely broken on the boat. Tilo, my computer tells me the internet connection is not steady.
Yes, your audio is smearing.
Yeah,
again.
could you just repeat the part about the Balmar furler, because that completely cut out.
Okay, so the picture is just showing rusty parts in the Balmar furler, and in fact, I never open the furlers unless I test them first, and if I hear a very bad noise, then I suggest to the owner to open the furler, because it's easy on a Bama furler, and that's what we did that day. Other than that, I never open the furlers during a survey. It's not my job to do it. But the noise of the furling systems must be also a warning. A strong and not soft noise must be a warning for something that has not been maintained or that is not working properly. Another thing that you cannot really see from the bottom of the boat, you can see that's at the top of the mizzen mast, the halyard has been installed out of the mast. So it has been replaced probably, but in a wrong way. So you can imagine that this halyard will chafe a little bit when there will be some pressure on the sail. There is always some movement at the top of the sail. So this halyard will easily wear out. We are now inside of the vessel. So, of course, very important to check the bulkheads and their color. And if the color has changed, this may be the sign of rotten parts. So the bulkhead we see here is completely rotten and will need to be replaced, which is sometimes really not an easy job, but it can be done, except the main bulkheads. The main bulkheads on the Amel boats are really a very big job, sometimes difficult to do. So that can really be a reason for not buying a boat, such a bulkhead. That's another example of what you can see inside the vessel. This is a hatch that has been installed after the boat is built. Someone wanted to have one more hatch on the aft deck of a Super Maramu. And you can see the deck has been cut, and you can see the balsa wood of the sandwich. This means the people who have installed it did not install it correctly. They should have removed the balsa wood for 2 or 3 centimeters deep, replaced it with polyester or epoxy filling compound, and then install the hatch on it. So this has to be redone. This will not be good, and the balsa wood will probably catch some moisture after some years. Inside the vessel, you have also the batteries. I'm sure there will be lots of questions about the batteries, but what we see here is a battery compartment with only I think that's 8 batteries instead of 12. So if you have a boat with 12 batteries, you should have 12 batteries in the battery compartment, and not only 6 or 8. We are again in the passageway of a Super Maramu, which has been transformed a lot. And in fact, what you see here is a workbench, and all the drawers are filled with so be careful when transforming the boat not to add too much weight to your boat. Sometimes I see boats that have far too much gear in the boat, and that's too much weight, and the boat is not designed for this. And especially, the rigging of a boat is designed based upon the weight of the boat. If you load your boat too much, it may stress the rigging too much too. So that was an example of an over-equipped boat. This is a rudder shaft, the top of the rudder shaft in the aft cabin of a Super Maramu. this one is in rather good condition, except that the steering cables, sheaths and tubes are unbalanced. And so this is also not very good on that boat. In fact, the wheel was totally unbalanced, and we had to rebalance the tubes that hold the cables. So that's also something to check. This shouldn't be like this. Now we're going to start the engine room. Tilo, you tell me if I'm too long or you think it's okay?
No, you're doing great.
Okay. So we are in an engine room, Super Maramu again. And what you can see here is the cradle of the engine, which has been modified, deeply modified, in the way that you see the mounts under the cradle, but also you see a second mount between the cradle and the engine. So when I saw that, I was very surprised. And this is, of course, not possible. You cannot run an engine on two sets of rubber mounts. The engine is too soft, and this will involve too much vibration and misalignment, and this will lead to the breaking of the drive shaft. So be careful with this. If you see this kind of heavy modification, walk away, I would say. This picture, I went once into an engine room and it was flooded, like you see on this picture. So of course, my advice to the people selling a boat is just the surveyor comes, have a look at the room and make sure it's not flooded. So of course, the beach was out of order in this boat, which looks nice, however. Okay, one more picture. That's it's difficult to guess, but I tell you, this is the hoses you see are seawater hoses, and someone has installed a plastic Gardena type fitting. Probably, I know why. Probably to flush all the seawater circuits with fresh water, which is basically a good idea, but this shouldn't be made of such a quick fitting garden plumbing, but with a regular valve and a fitting, even if it's plastic, that can be a plastic valve, but not the kind of fitting that you have in your garden. This is also something strange I saw on a Super Maramu. That's the fuel tank. That's the side of the stainless steel fuel tank, and the people have made strangely a hole. I don't know exactly why, probably to inspect it, but that's a very bad idea to do it on the side. If you have a fuel tank without inspection hatches, and if you want to make some, then you have to do it on the top of the tank, not on the side. Okay, because this may lead to leaks and to big problems. So that's an example of a rusty area in that's an Amel 55. So also it's better to keep the rust out if possible, before showing your boat that you want to sell. Oh, okay, I think that's the last picture. Okay, Tilo, I
Okay.
think maybe we can start the questions.
Okay, great. So
Question?
if you, yeah, you can just stop sharing your screen, and maybe then we see if when you're not sharing the screen, maybe turn your camera back on
Yeah.
and see how that goes. So I had a couple of questions. One was specific. You were showing cracks in the water tanks and on the delaminated ribs, and Robert was asking how does one, you know, what is the repair for that?
That's in my opinion, that's something that the seller has to do. I would say, don't buy a boat that shows so many bad things. Now, if the seller and the buyer are okay, I have nothing against, but then the purchaser has to know, and I tell him, of course, what he will have to face. In that case, when I see cracks in the freshwater tank, that means the access to the whole freshwater tank is going to be needed. That means a lot of taking down of the furniture, and sometimes the inspection hatches of the freshwater tank has to be enlarged, you know, made bigger for better access, and then rebuilt to be as original. So you can imagine these are big works. However, if it's only a question of tightening the keel bolts, this can be done with the hatches, with the openings as they are. You don't need to enlarge the openings. But if you need to reinstall bonding clothes with GRP, then sometimes you need to make these holes bigger, and that's a big work.
Okay, great. Now I've got a couple of questions on the sort of logistics of this. So Harry was asking, what is the approximate cost of a survey on a 54? And then my addition to that would be, and do different models of Amels have different cost considerations just for the survey itself?
Yes, I speak for myself, of course. I don't know what my colleagues do, but yes, I spend more time when the boat is bigger and has more equipment. So for a 54, currently a 54, that's 1,400 euros plus VAT.
Mm-hmm.
Unless I sell this survey to a company, and then for companies out of the EU, no VAT, and for companies inside the EU, and this company has a VAT number, then there is no VAT.
Okay.
And the VAT is 20%.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's for a 54. Is there any significant difference for a Super Maramu or a Santorin?
For instance, Santorin will be 1,200 without VAT, and a 55 or 64. 64 will be much more, because the 64 is very complicated, and I really spend a lot of time in this.
Okay. And that follows on to a question that Brian asked, is how much time should be allowed for the survey? One person had mentioned that you had surveyed his boat in 1 day.
Yes.
And so, yeah, is it a 1 day job? Is it more than that?
It's between what, you know, the day can be short or long depending on the season. That's 1 full day in summertime. I may need some more time in the winter time because it's dark and I don't like to work in the dark. And yes, sometimes also depending on the haul-out facilities and how quick the boat gets back in the water, that can delay. And so when I'm traveling, I always schedule 2 days, and so that I have some time to lose if it happens.
And is there a difference between a survey for valuation purposes versus a purchase survey?
No, I don't make any difference. And the insurance companies, they would like the surveyors to just fill up an Excel sheet, you know, but I don't like that. And so I do exactly the same for a valuation survey, pre-purchase survey, or insurance survey. It's always the same kind of inspection. It lasts the same time, and it's the same report.
And as far as the survey is concerned, one person was asking, does the boat need to be out of the water for a significant amount of time prior to the survey in order to fully and properly inspect it?
Out of the water, I need between 1 and 2 hours.
But should
considering the hull is clean, because when we haul out the boat, if it's very dirty, then I ask for the hull to be clean. But I ask this question in advance to the owner. I always ask, how long, when was the last haul out for anti-fouling? If he tells me 2 years, then I ask definitely that he schedules hull cleaning before I can work, because otherwise that's really pointless.
Okay, and one question that actually Eric has several questions, but one of those is how many Amels have you found with osmosis? And if you want to check for osmosis, how long should the boat be out of the water prior to your inspection?
You know, I'm talking about osmosis when it is visible, and then I assess how bad it is. Sometimes I see small bubbles only on the rudder, and then for me it's not a big deal, although the rudder will need to be treated, but it's not a reason for the purchaser not to buy the boat. If I see 2 centimeters bubbles on the hull and about 30 bubbles per square meter, then I suggest that the purchaser does not buy the boat. For me, it's up to the owner, the current owner, to do the job and sell his boat once the job is done, because the job can take 6 months. That's the problem. And not all the people are ready to buy a boat that needs 6 months of hard work.
Olivier, just to come back to that question of mine, how many Super Maramus or Amels did you find with osmosis in your career?
Very few, very few. The reason is that I don't know if you know, but I tell you, since 1987, that's about the years when the osmosis problem started in the GRP construction. Amel, since 1987, Amel lays a coat of resin with glass scales, which are small particles of glass, about 2 millimeters in diameter. And this is to prevent from water penetration. And so this coat is applied right after the gel coat in the mold. And so Amel sprays the gel coat first, and then applies the resin with the glass scales, and then starts with the glass coat. And they still do it on the new boats. So very, I've seen really very few Amel boats with osmosis, but I've seen super Maramus. I've seen a mango, especially with lots of bubbles, and then the people buy or don't buy, but they know that there is a problem that they will have to face, maybe not now, but in the future.
Yeah, that's reassuring that most of the super Maramus don't have it.
Yes, definitely. So you can ask me then why, if they are protected with these glass scales, why is there osmosis? One of the problems that can happen to a hull is people cleaning the hull with too powerful pressure machines. In every harbor in the world, even in La Rochelle, you can rent a machine that pushes 200 bar water pressure. And if you don't pay attention, if you come too close to the hull, or you know, if there's a barnacle, and if you want to remove the barnacle, you use the high pressure machine instead of a scraper, then you will damage the GRP. You will not see at once, of course, that the damage is done, but in 2 or 3 years, you may see some bubbles. So the very important is not to use a machine with more than 80 bar pressure, and not too close to the GRP, not less than 20 centimeters. If there is really a lot of dirt, you'd better remove it with a tool, you know, with a scraper. Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Be careful with your GRP.
That's always a good thing. One
Also,
question.
I have remarked that when I saw the osmosis, it was more on the vertical parts of the boat, like the keel stub, the skeg, and the rudder. And my idea is it is easier to damage these areas more than the hull, because when you hold your high pressure gun to the hull, it's more tiring, so you don't stay a long time. If it's to the keel stub or the skeg, it's easier to hold it a long time, and you know, this is maybe the reason why these areas are more damaged than the hull usually.
Okay, another question we have is, how often do you see, or have you ever seen loose keel boats in an Amel?
Not very often. Not very often. I'm sure because when people have a severe grounding, they repair it. Most of the people repair it. And sometimes there is one that does not pay attention and who does not repair it. But I think really that most of the people, they put a claim to their insurance and they ask for the repair of the boat. That's why I think I don't see so many.
Good. Okay. So I've got a couple of questions, basically about the engine, the mechanical diagnostics of engine generator. Is your inspection? Do you do a visual, or do you suggest that people also get a mechanic to do a specific engine generator test?
Again, that's a frequent question from my clients. They always ask me, do you do an oil analysis? So I've got in my tools everything to get oil samples, but I do this only in case I have a big doubt about the engine. But the most important is to first test the engine. So make a test, let the engine warm up, test it at sea at full power, check the vibrations, the heating, the noise, the leaks, the smokes, and everything that could tell that the engine is not 100%. A very frequent thing that happens is about the turbo of the engines which are fitted with turbos. When the turbo is seized, you can, of course, you don't have the full power of the engine. So this is definitely something to check by the local Yanmar or Volvo dealer. Okay. But making an oil analysis is something that should be done in a special way. That means the oil should be replaced. The new oil should be run for 5-10 hours, and then the sample should be taken. If you make an oil analysis on maybe a 3-4 years old oil with 500 hours, which sometimes happen, you will not be able to tell much. So, but probably some other things will tell me that there is a problem, especially the smoke at the exhaust, and or the vibrations or overheating of the engine.
Okay. Okay. Now, a question. We noticed that you mentioned that if a boat has a battery compartment for 12 batteries, you should have 12 batteries. Nowadays, a lot of people are switching over to lithium, which, of course, they don't need the capacity that 12 lithiums would give them. So, is there what is the reasoning for saying you should fill that compartment?
Well, if the boat has been designed with a compartment for 12 batteries, you should keep it as it is. First thing is to avoid having questions from your buyer. I think, for instance, if you have 12 batteries and 1 or 2 batteries are in short circuit, of course, you can just disconnect 1 or 2 pairs and your boat will be okay with 8 batteries, no problem, even 6 batteries. Less than this, then this may be a problem in the voltage drop when using big motors and the bar thruster. So really be careful with this. And when I check the batteries, I put a load on them for 2-3 hours, and I check how quick the voltage drops. That's the first thing. And after charging the batteries, I check them separately just to check if one is in short circuit. Because a battery which has an element in short circuit is very dangerous. This can really make the battery compartment explode, and it has already happened. And yes, so it's very important, even for the people who don't want to sell their boat. Once a year, disconnect all the batteries and test them. If you find one battery with 10 volts instead of 12, or 10.5 instead of 12.8, you really need to disconnect this pair of batteries.
Okay, good. Now, one person was asking about the Amel practice of having
Sorry, Tilo.
Yeah.
I think about the lithium batteries, because you mentioned the lithium batteries.
Mhm.
I have not much experience about the lithium batteries, but they can be also dangerous. Like the lead acid batteries can explode. In fact, the battery does not explode. The gas going out of the battery can lead to an explosion. And the lithium batteries are also, in my opinion, a bit dangerous. And you know, some batteries in Samsung phones did catch fire. And in the aircrafts, you cannot take big lithium batteries in the baggage lockers. Okay, so installing lithium batteries on a boat is a bit different, like installing lithium batteries on a car. On a car, if something catches fire, you just leave the car and it burns. In a boat, you have to deal with the fire, and that can be a problem. So when installing lithium batteries, you must absolutely vent the battery compartment with a fan with in and out openings. It must be sealed, and there must be an automatic fire fighting system included in this compartment. Okay, that's the least. Okay.
Tilo, may I come in at this point?
Okay, Alexander.
Yeah, I have purchased my ML 54. That was the first of the last year's production of the Gold line in 2013, and I have had a really major technical problem in vibrations inside. And Olivier Beaute helped me a lot with that. I had a survey of 3 days, and it was really helpful. And I've been 3 years in La Rochelle in training, in technical development of the ML. I've been really, I'm very fascinated about that. And I had a lot of help of Olivier about that. And I've further developed the boat with a lot of also electronical equipment, and with renewable energies out of solar, of windshield, and of a hydrogen generator. And I'm on the North Atlantic since a couple of years. I'm doing my single-handed sailing also there, and I have extensive experience with that. Yeah? And I just can double underline what Olivier said, that a solid capacity of the 24-volt battery bank is really really the key point, yeah, for keeping the energy production from solar, from wind, from hydro generator, with the consumption that you have, yeah, and you learn if you really dig into the topic when to take out the energy of your battery bank and when to put it in, yeah. And I'm very happy with that, and also the teaching that Olivier has given me with a 12.6, 12.3 or whatever voltage I got to have in there before I see that the batteries run weak, yeah. And additionally, I know that there's an extensive discussion on the Amel Yacht Owners Forum net about lithium batteries. I have 2 pairs of batteries for my Toki 2 outboarder, and I'm very happy with that. And but I did check exactly also the risks of lithium batteries, yeah, on board, and I'm very happy to have them in the aft locker. I would not be so very happy to have them inside the ship. Yeah. So just to say it with one word, I'm very happy with my standard batteries with 12 of them, and and for the energy management on board, even to have to a very maximum level of autonomy that I have developed there. This is really the key factor.
Mm-hmm. Okay, good. So that's interesting to hear. What we had also, one person was asking about the Amel standard of having gray water drain into the bilge, and asking about on an older boat like a Sharky or Maramu, how do you feel about seeing when people put that into a dedicated through hull instead of having it drain into the bilge?
I'm not sure I have understood the question. You mean some galley sinks or wash basins are draining directly through hull?
Yes.
And in some
have you seen people plumb the gray water, the galley sinks and the showers to through hulls instead of into the bilge?
Yes, I've seen that for galley sinks only. Because for showers, it's not really possible. They are too low, and wash basins could be possible, but I have really nothing against draining the galley sink directly overboard, because you know, through the galley sink you may have a lot of food debris, and this may clog the grey water bilge in the engine room, and this may be a problem. So yes, making a straight drain from the galley sink outboard is not a problem. Of course, you need to install a valve on it, but why not? Why not?
Okay.
This is going a little bit out of Henry Amel philosophy, but this was standard on the Maramu. On the Maramu in the years 80 to 90 roughly, the Maramu and the Mango was draining the galley sink directly outboard.
Okay. I've got a couple of questions about standing rigging. Specifically, how long do you feel that standing rigging should be, or when should it be replaced? What interval do you recommend for replacing it? And is there a difference between med versus tropics?
The question comes, of course, always, and my answer is always the same. I don't answer with years, but with minds. And you know, these boats, and I know some boats that have been around the world within 2 years. So if you've been around the world and back to La Rochelle, then it's time to change your rigging. Although if it's only 2 years, okay, that's because of the miles. That's so roughly that's 40 to 50,000 miles. Okay, at least at 40 to 50,000 miles, you must have a deep inspection of the standing rigging that you can see, and the one you cannot see, such as the forestay, because it's under the furling foil, then you need to inspect it or just replace it. The forestay is always the first to be replaced because it works a lot. It works bent a little bit, curved at least, and you have the furling foil working on it. So that's really the most loaded cable on these boats, on the Amel boats. Oh, okay. So keep in mind 40 to 50,000 miles. And in terms of years, I start seeing broken strands on the original cables. Of course, depending on navigation, but I know some boats that have never left La Rochelle, almost, that have been sailing just on the Atlantic coast of France. And definitely after 25 years, it's time to replace the rigging. But of course, it can happen before.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, then but some, of course, some insurance companies say every 10 to 12 years, no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
Then
you have no choice.
Mm-hmm.
Of course. So it's very important. That's what I tell my clients too. Ask your insurer and ask them to write it down. What is the policy? What will they do if a cable of the standing rigging breaks and it leads to a dismasting? And they must answer you, well, after 10 years, you get nothing. Or they will tell you, well, after 10 years or 15 years, you will get so much % of the damage. But they should be able to answer you. More and more, they tend to tell you that after 10 years and a dismasting, you get nothing.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But this must be discussed before you purchase the insurance contract. Sure.
Definitely. Okay, a couple of people have asked about copper coat anti-fouling and what experience you've seen with copper coat treatments on Amels.
I haven't seen so many. I've seen copper coats on maybe 5 to 10 boats, so not so many really. I must say it looks very good. For sure, when applied, you must be very careful. The shipyard that does the job must be very careful to apply it, and also not to put this copper coat on metal parts. There are not so many, but for instance, no copper coat on the stainless steel rudder supports, on the, of course, on the drive shaft, on the metal parts generally. And when you put on the ballast, of course, you must make sure the epoxy fairing compound is totally sealed, in order that there is no copper coat directly on the metal. They should know. They know about that. I mean, the shipyards that apply copper coat, they know that they should not put this copper coat on metal parts. And also, I've seen on most of these boats that the shipyard had put a sheet of plastic or rubber between the zinc anode and the rudder blade, which is correct. You must not put the zinc directly on the copper coat, otherwise it wears out very quickly. But I've seen one without a sheet. So of course there was no more, not much more zinc left, and I told the owner because of this. So, but it's a small thing. I think it works fine. All the people I have asked told me it was okay, and I've read on the Amel forum that some people were very pleased with this. I'm thinking about Jan Jenkins, who is definitely someone to trust. So, well, I think it's a good thing. But
Okay.
Well done.
Mm-hmm. Good to know. One person was saying that they've been quoted when talking with potential surveyors, they've been told also that they might need to get thermal imaging or ultrasonic. Do you find that these kinds of tests have any benefit in Amels?
Ultrasonic for GRP hulls?
Yeah.
Why not? But I don't see I don't see really what, unless you think there is a lot of air bubbles in the GRP, but that's not the case in Amel boats. And yes, well, that could happen in case of a big repair. Of course, if the repair has not been well done, but then you should know about the repair. You can see the repair because most of the time on a big repair, you see a difference in color of the top sides. You see also from the inside that some stringers and bonding clothes have been replaced. At least I see this because I know the kind of special glass cloth that Amel uses. You can recognize it. And if someone applies other clothes, it is never the Amel cloth. So, and then it's easy to tell if there has been a repair. And then if I have a doubt about the repair, I do some tapping, but I have never used ultrasonic measurements.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah. Yeah. So, okay. So it's, and then one person asked about during the survey, is it possible to really control for the quality of the membranes in the water maker?
I run the water maker if the owner wants me to do, because some of them tell me, oh no, it's winterized, I don't want. Okay, so then I don't do it. But when I do, I run the water maker mainly to check for seawater leaks. Remember, the surveyor worries about the boat sinking. Okay, so running the water maker to make sure there is no seawater leaks. And also the problem with seawater leaks on a water maker is if it happens on the high pressure side, you make a drizzle of seawater in the engine room, and then it's a nightmare for all the equipment. Okay, so I run this to check the seawater leaks, and then I check how much water is produced, and I taste the water. I don't measure the ppm because it can vary a lot. So if I don't find the water salty, I say it's okay.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, so
We'll go further.
somebody, my experience is you should always just assume you have to replace the membranes.
Yes, and if I run the water maker, if it's a 100 liter per hour, that makes 100 liters per hour with no leaks, for me, it's okay. And there's no salt taste, sorry, then for me, it's okay.
Yep. Okay. Now, Pat and Scott were asking, is there, do you get an instant feel from a boat? If you get onto a Maramoo, Super Maramoo, and look around the boat, can you fairly quickly sum up the sort of the overall condition of the boat in a general sense?
Sure. If you look inside the boat and it's a bit dirty. I mean, it's dirty in some hidden places, or the engine room is very black and oily. Black and oily, that means there has been lots of oil spill, or the people changing the oil are not careful, or black because of the rubber dust from the belts. This is not good. And then I can tell you that after that, I check all the equipments and I find 1, 2, 3, 5 pumps out of order, and so on. So for sure, someone who wants to sell his boat should at least make a good cleaning and make sure all the equipments are working. Okay, that's if we start. Sometimes my surveys, the first document I give to my clients after the survey is just a list of all my findings, and the list can be half a page to 2 pages. If it's a 2-page boat, you can guess that there will be some discussion, okay? And then the report comes after 4 or 5 days because I need some time to write the report. But only the list can tell the buyer that he's going to face or not problems. But
Okay.
within 2 or 3 hours, I can make a first statement of what I'm going to find.
Okay, great. I've got a couple of questions, basically talking about sort of build quality over time and sort of longevity and reliability. So, what have you seen in differences as far as workmanship, build quality between, for instance, the Maramoo and the Santorin? And are boats like the Euros and the Sharky, do you feel that they're capable, or one should expect them to have a life span of 50 years or greater?
Talking about the Euros and this generation, it was the start of the GRP construction, and these boats were really over-dimensioned, definitely. So these boats were very strong, for sure. Strong, I mean, in a grounding situation. And then, to make these boats a bit faster, Amel and other builders, they reduced the thickness of the hull, and also they put less bulkheads and stringers, and I think now it has come to more balanced boats. I think a good compromise between weight and speed and reliability. So the best compromise is Super Maramoo 54 and the next ones. Before, yes, the boats were a bit too heavy. That means, of course, very strong, but sometimes a bit slow. That's the downside of these boats. But I'm sure a Santorin or Supermaramu has an 80 years life. Yes, sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
As
and
long as
so
it is maintained and if damaged, repaired, of course.
certainly, certainly. So in general terms with Amels, is there one problem that you see is prevalent that you see consistently across surveys that have to be most or more often repaired or addressed?
It's difficult to answer. It's very difficult to answer. No. The structure and the mast. I mean, I've never seen something just falling off like this. All the other parts, they can be replaced, like the standing rigging or the engine, the generator, the plumbing, the valves, the bar thruster. These are all only equipments. But the structure, as long as it's not caught in a storm and in a harbor, because a storm at sea, that's okay, but a storm in a harbor, that's the problem. Boats hitting themselves, each other.
Mm-hmm.
So as long as there's no such conditions, no, that's only a question of replacing the damaged equipments, pumps and electronics and lights and sometimes to improve the systems, improve the power consumption. The LED lights have improved a lot the power question, for sure.
Okay. So, okay, I've got two more questions here. One is, what do you look at in repowering? How do you feel about the options that you've seen people undertake in repowering vessels? Especially, looking at Maramus or Santorins, we're seeing a lot that have repowering after their ancient engines go out. What do you feel is the appropriate horsepower to put in one?
Horsepower, the same as the architect put in the beginning. First of all, when you build a leisure craft within the European directive, you cannot increase the power of a boat more than 10% without inspecting and redesigning boats. So if you have a Santorin which has been built with a 50 horsepower engine, keep the 50 horsepower. You can put 60 horsepower. First of all, it will not change a lot to the hull speed. And yes, sometimes you have no choice. There is no more 50 horsepower. There is a 40 horsepower and then a 60 horsepower. You can put the 60 horsepower. But, I mean, the speed of the boat is determined by the hull. So you can put 100 horsepower on the Santorin. The maximum speed with the engine will not be increased. And at cruising speed, for instance, on a Supermaramu, which is equipped as a standard with an 80 horsepower, and some engines have 100 horsepower. At cruising speed, you use about 30 to 40 horsepower. And the more power you need is when maneuvering in harbors. This is when you need the 70, 80 horsepower, or a bit more. And then, of course, you need some power for the alternators. But I mean, don't put a 120 horsepower in a Super Marimo. It will not change much. It will not change the speed of the boat. It will not help you more in the docking maneuvers. And don't go too far compared with the original engine.
Tilo, this is Alexander again. May I come into this point with a very personal, deep experience?
Okay, just briefly.
Yeah, very shortly. I do sailing since 14 years. I did diving before, yeah? And I love to be outside in the rough nature. And I just had one really difficult and dangerous experience in all my times. And this when I had a willy war in north of Lanzarote, and in the night I had an increasing storm going from 8 before to 11 before in the morning. And I did stand up in the cockpit, and in the morning I did lift up the anchor and went against 11 before and 2 meter seas. And I have found out, I never had that before, and again, hopefully, yeah, but just going with the engine of 110 horsepower to 2,500 RPM, and this is by far not the maximum that this engine does, did bring by far enough force for going against 11 before and 2 meters waves. Yeah, so this is not only in port maneuvers where you usually need your engine. If you're in really life danger, then I'm very happy that I have such a strong engine in a 54 boat. Yeah, that's it.
Okay, great. So just to wrap this up here, so I see, Rudy, you had your hand up here. Do you have a brief question here?
So sorry, Tilo, this was my mistake.
Okay.
Okay.
Never mind. Okay, just to wrap this up, there's a general philosophical question here. And of course, it derives from Bill's adage about about getting a cheap boat is maybe not always the best deal. And from your perspective, is it is there a balance between price and reliability as far as the deal that you're getting on the boat?
That's not the only question, I would say. When buying a boat, a cheap boat, and you're going to have a lot of work to do, you must be okay with this. You must accept that you need 6 months or 12 months of work in the boat, and maybe you like it. Some people really buy cheap boats not only because they are cheap, but because they want a safe structure in which they will install this water maker, these batteries, this and this and this. So that can be an option for some people, and they will like it. But you must be ready for taking time to do it. Some people want to buy an Amel boat and leave for a long trip after 2 or 3 months, just for the time they need to learn the boat. So and of course, buying a boat that is really ready for long cruising is more expensive. So I have all kinds of sellers, all kinds of boats for sale, and all kinds of clients. Very recently, a young man, maybe he could be my son, I guess, bought a Super Marimo in which there is a lot of work to do, but he's okay with this. And I told him, that's the best way to learn a boat. You will go through the boat and slowly work in the boat, replacing this and that. And that's the best way to know your boat for your project in 2 or 3 years of around the world cruising. Maybe did I cover this question or?
Yeah, I think that gives a good explanation. I think Bill, you.
Yeah, I want to wrap it up. We could go on for 2 more hours. We're well over. We're 40 minutes over. And Olivier, I really appreciate you doing this for us today. And I'm sure that everybody in this Zoom meeting and all of the people that are going to view it afterwards will really appreciate it too. But we have to respect everybody's time, and 40 minutes over, a 1 hour meeting at 1 hour and 40 minutes is time to bring it to an end. So again, Olivier, thank you so very much for doing this. Your presentation was very informative. Your answers to the questions were unbelievably on point. And I'm going to add one thing, only one thing, to something that we just discussed at the last, and that is to say what I always say, and that is sometimes the cheapest Amel will be the most expensive Amel when you get it in condition. It just happens that way. So again, thank everybody, and you too, Olivier.
Okay, so may I suggest something? Maybe
yes, one more thing.
we could just do one meeting like this in 6 months, and in between, maybe just focus. Collect questions that focus on some points that are not being covered this time.
Olivier, if you would do that for us, we would all love it, right? Does everybody agree with me on that?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Maybe before someone has to collect some questions and we can do a meeting like this. Because the
good idea.
Forces us to do this, huh? It's
okay.
Okay.
So one really quick question, because a couple of people have asked, what is your availability? How long in advance do they need to book a survey with you?
Usually it's 3 to 4 weeks, depending on the location, of course. If I go far away, it's a bit more time to organize the trip and all this. But usually that's 3 to 4 weeks.
And can you travel now, Olivier?
Of course, if it's a boat in La Rochelle or in France, it's quicker. But it can be quicker, especially in La Rochelle, where there are lots of Amel boats.
In 3 bis 4 Wochen sind wir da.
Yeah. And have you been able, I guess it's been pretty difficult to travel internationally lately, hasn't it?
Sure. I had to cancel in the springtime. I had to cancel a trip to Antigua, and in fact, in the springtime, I was very worried about my business because I really did not work for 2 months and a half, and then it came back really quickly and massively. So I don't worry. I'm traveling easily throughout Europe. So I've been to Germany, Netherlands, Spain, Italy, Sicily, really easily. But with tests, I have to make a test for virus before taking the flight. And now I can see there are less and less flights in Europe.
Okay, great.
But I'm still traveling, yes.
Terrific.
Are we done?
Yep. I think,
you might want to say next meeting is, next month is Jimmy Cornell, right? And Jimmy Cornell is going to present preparing for a Pacific crossing.
Very interesting.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Olivier, and thank you, Bill, for setting this up. It's been a greatly informative session. I've had a great time, and I wish everybody well. Look forward to seeing you next month.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. Wishing
Thank
that
you.
Ciao.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ciao, ciao.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very
Bye-bye.
much.
Thank
Happy
you.
New Year to
Ciao.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Fine.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. It was awesome. Thank you.
Oh. Yeah, thanks a lot.
Bye-bye.
Okay, so thank you very much. I'm signing off now.
Okay, bye-bye all,
Bye-bye.
and Happy New Year.
Yeah.